Hi, and welcome to the Low Content Publishing for Beginners video series. My name is Rachel Harrison-Sund. In today's video, I'm going to be addressing 5 of the most common mistakes that I see low content publishers making so that you can avoid making the same ones. So the first mistake that I see many low content publishers making is that they fail to properly validate their book idea before creating it. So obviously when they do this, it results in poor or no sales. So what a lot of people do in the beginning is they create a book that they want to create rather than doing the research to find out what kind of book other people are actually searching for. So this is, to me, the difference between a hobbyist, so someone who is creating books just because they enjoy the process and it's a creative expression for them, which is totally fine. But if you want to look at this as a business, where you're actually trying to make income and, not just a few dollars here or there, but a real meaningful part or full-time income, then you have to do the research. You have to look at this as a business, not just a creative hobby. And that really involves doing that research up front and validating that book idea so that you've got a pretty solid idea of whether that book is going to sell before you ever even create that book. So you've really got to do that research up front. So if you haven't already, make sure to check out my idea validation video, which I think is video 2 in the series. Anyways, I'll link that in the description below. But that is absolutely imperative for you to get sales. Validating your idea, well, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to make sales. It does dramatically increase your odds, and it will tell you if you're on the right track before you ever even create that book. So validate that idea first. The second mistake that I see people making is producing quantity over quality. Now, many of you know that you're going to have to create more than a couple of books to start generating some real income. That could be dozens, that could even be several hundred. There is a volume aspect to this game, and that's fine, but the difference is making sure that you are really focusing on quality first over quantity. I've definitely seen people doing this that have put up over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 plus books, and a lot of times really what they're doing is they're just pumping out books at full volume, hoping that some of them will sell. And while that might be a good strategy in the beginning, for a long-term business, I don't think that's going to create a ton of success. Once you've got, 3,000 or 4,000 books up on KDP, how are you even supposed to keep track of any of those books, right? If you want to go in and adjust some keywords or some categories and tweak certain things, it just becomes absolutely unmanageable. So really want to focus on that quality. Don't worry about racing to the finish line here. Think about your business longevity and create things a little bit more slowly and a little bit more thoughtfully. And once you find something that works, then you can expand on that and not just, throwing a bunch of, stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. You really want to put a little bit more thought into it. The third mistake that I see people making is violating copyright. So violation of copyright can take several different forms. So you could be using images that you don't have permission to use. So you could just be using images from a Google search and not properly attributing the artist. You could be using quotes from famous people that you do not have permission to use, or you could be blatantly copying another publisher's cover art on one of their books. And obviously, all of these things are actually illegal, so you don't want to be ever doing them. Yet I see people do this all the time. So first off, when you're using an image, wherever you get that image from, there will be a license attached to it. So unless you're using that image from the public domain, then that's totally fine. But if you're using imagery from free image websites, there will still be a license attached to that image. And what that license will tell you is how you can use that image for free. So usually what that means is you will have to attribute the artist of that image somewhere on your finished work. So So if you're using a free image on your cover, for example, and the license requires you to attribute the artist, what you can do is you can just do that in very tiny print on the inside cover. You can just say cover artwork by and then that person's name. Oftentimes they require you to use a URL, so you might have to type that in there. And it can be really small. You can put that, like I said, on the inside cover. You can put it on the back cover somewhere hidden. That's totally fine, but you do want to make sure that you are properly attributing the artist that has been gracious enough to provide that image for you for free, because images can be really expensive. So we do want to give credit where credit is due. The other thing is, if you're using images from a paid site, you don't have to worry about this. You have paid that company to use the image. You do not need to attribute the artist, so you're covered there. That's totally fine. A really big gray area is the usage of quotes from famous people. Now, this is a really tricky one. There's a misconception that as long as you write down who the quote is, who said it, then that is legally covering you because you have attributed that quote. And it is not as cut and dry as that. Oftentimes, famous people, especially after they've passed away, they have estates that control all of these things. You know, they've got quotes that are being used in different materials that companies actually have to pay to use. So you do have to be extremely careful when you're using these quotes, unless there are quotes that you know are in the public domain, which you will have to look up each specific quote. So for me, I only use quotes that I know for certain are in the public domain. Otherwise, I just don't use them. Or what I'll do is I'll take maybe a bit more of a famous quote and I'll just put a little bit of a different spin on it. You have to do more than just change one word. But basically I create a quote that kind of has the gist of the quote that I want to use, but it's not the exact quote. So I just kind of change it up enough. But that is something that you want to be really, really careful with. It's something that I see all the time, so just keep it in mind. The other thing is, don't copy someone else's artwork. I had a really frustrating experience last year where I had a day planner that was selling really, really well, and 2 or 3 other publishers just started using basically my exact artwork on my cover and the quote that I had on the front and everything. I mean, it looked like it was a complete ripoff. It was my exact cover. And then what they did is they undercut the price by about $3. So they were definitely attempting to kind of piggyback on my book's success and offer it at a much lower price. So in that case, what I did and what you can do too is first attempt to communicate with that self-publisher. If they've got an email listed in their book or on their author page or something like that, you can email them directly and just try and sort it out that way. In 2 of these cases, I couldn't do that, so there is actually a form on Amazon's website where you can report copyright infringement, and which I had to do, and that person ended up having their books taken down. And you definitely don't want to be on the other side of that. I mean, it was not fun for me, but it's also not fun for the other person, because their book was taken down, and that can really put your account in jeopardy. So it's okay to take inspiration from other people's ideas. If you see some artwork that you really like and you think you could, you know, put a fresh take on it or whatever, that's fine, but you cannot outright copy someone else's cover artwork. So it seems like something that shouldn't need to be said, but it really does, and I do see that all the time, so definitely keep that in mind. So the 4th mistake I see self-publishers making sometimes is attempting to game the system. So this used to be a lot more rampant back in the earlier days of fiction and non-fiction publishing. With the introduction of Kindle, it took them quite a number of years to kind of iron out the kinks. There were a lot of loopholes that were kind of left open, and self-publishers were easily able to take advantage of this. I don't think any really serious self-publishers did this, but people that were just trying to get in on the action and make some money really quickly definitely did. So most of those loopholes have now been closed, but there's still a couple of little things that kind of keep rearing their head here and there that I'm still seeing. So the same kind of applies to the low content publishing, not in as big of a way, but some of the things that I see people doing are engaging in review swaps. And again, I just like to let reviews accumulate naturally. First off, the review swapping is against Amazon's terms of service. So you really don't want to do anything to tick off Amazon, because they can come down very swiftly on you. So if Amazon thinks for a second that you're engaging in review swaps, or you're getting your reviews from anywhere other than organic customer searches and verified customers, then they will just wipe out your reviews and they will be all gone anyways. So you really want to avoid doing that. The other thing that I see low content publishers currently doing as an attempt to game the system is they are placing their published books into categories that their books do not belong in. So low competition categories that their books don't belong in, so that once their book makes even 1 or 2 sales, because there aren't really many books in that category that they've chosen, they have a very high chance of gaining that bestsellers badge. And once that book has the bestsellers badge, Amazon will increase that book's visibility in the Amazon store and basically get the book in front of more eyeballs. It's now got the bestsellers badge, so that's a lot more enticing for customers, and then that can in turn generate more and more sales. So this is not a good long-term strategy. It's going to hurt you in the long run, and it is a very, very poor customer experience. So for example, I was doing some niche research. I was in, I don't know, I think it was something like sea kayaking, and I type in, you know, I'm on that category of sea kayaking, and up pops about 10 journals with, I don't know, like cats or something on the front. And those books clearly did not belong in that category. One of them had a bestsellers badge, so it was clear to me that that person had specifically requested to be in that niche of sea kayaking, this very narrow niche, specifically so that they could get that badge and improve their book's visibility and hopefully generate more sales. So, I mean, if I'm a paying customer and I'm genuinely interested in looking at books in the sea kayaking category, and I enter that category and all I see are, you know, a dozen books that have nothing to do with what I'm looking for, that's a really poor experience for me, and I'm liable to complain to Amazon, like, look, what's going on here? What's up with your category system? You know, it doesn't make any sense. So the more and more customers complain about this, and believe me, they will, because customers do love to complain sometimes, this is going to be another loophole that will be closed. You know, Amazon will have to eventually find another way to categorize their books, or, you know, more likely it will come back on us as self-publishers, where, you know, right now we are allowed to request additional categories. That might be something that disappears. We don't know what's going to happen, but that type of trying to take advantage of the system does come back to bite all of us in the butt. So I do not recommend that strategy. I think it's really not a good long-term strategy for you or for any of us. So I really just want to discourage that right out of the gate. So the final mistake that I see new low content publishers making, and it's probably the one that I want to help you out with the most, is that I see them quit too soon. So many people that I have shown this business model to, if they don't get the success that they want right out of the gate, they just quit immediately. You know, they might throw up one book and it doesn't make any sales at all, so it's like, okay, this doesn't work, I'm done. And that is no way to achieve success at anything that you do. So people just forget sometimes that this is a brand new skill they're learning, so they probably aren't going to get it right at first, and that's totally okay. I mean, look at anyone who has had any real success in any endeavor. Did they get it right at first? You know, no, you don't. You have to just keep falling and picking yourself back up until finally you get there. So Another thing I want to bring up again is this 80-20 principle. Okay, so that's 20% of your results, or rather 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions or activities. And I have found that to be true in my self-publishing business. 20% of my books are responsible for 80% of my income. Like, do you have any idea how many of the books that I have published did not sell? Like, not even a single copy. So I've had so many flops, and I could have walked away and said, well, this just isn't working. But I kept at it. And the longer I stayed with it, the more I figured out what works and what doesn't. And I just got better and better at, now when I publish a book, most of them do make sales because I've figured it out. But in the beginning, I might have thrown up 20 books and maybe 5 or 10 of them actually sold anything. And that's fine. I mean, in the beginning, you're just figuring it out, seeing what works, what doesn't, and that is a completely normal place to be. So you just have to push through that. I think another sort of a block that people have is that they don't actually realize how many books is actually necessary to publish before you can start making that decent income. I've had to publish several hundred books over the course of the last couple of years to get where I am. So it's not a matter of just 5 or 10 runaway success books. It is a numbers game. There is a volume aspect to it. You do obviously want to focus on quality rather than quantity, but most of the time, a couple of books just aren't going to be enough. You are going to have to put up several dozen or more before you kind of get one of those big successes. So, I have had books which have, a single book that makes me several $1,000s per month, but it took me months to get to that point where I could produce a book like that. So everything is a slow build, it's a slow burn, and that's fine. So you just have to keep that all in mind and really dedicate yourself to keeping on trying new things until you find something that does work. So one of my favorite quotes is from R. Collier, or maybe it's Collier, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but it is, "Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out." So, the name of the game is consistency. Just work on things a little bit each day, and as you do that, and as you're trusting in that process, you will be learning with each new book that you publish. The people that have success with this business model, they're the ones that know that it takes time and it takes a lot of trial and error, and they're just willing to keep trying until something works. So I want you to do the same thing. Okay, so those are the 5 mistakes which I know you're all now going to avoid. Thanks for watching. If you want more low content publishing tips, you can check me out on my blog at rachelharrisonson.com. I will leave a link to that in the description below. And I'll also leave a link to my guide, 3 Steps to Publishing Your First Low Content Book in Less Than a Day. Also, if you're finding these videos useful, make sure to hit the subscribe button and you'll get a notification next video that comes out. Thank you.